And we are live. Hello, hello, hello. First thing I got to do is test that we are really live. And we do this because in the past I actually spent a half hour um, streaming video with no sound. And as fun as it may be to watch me move my mouth for a half hour without any sound, that's not the goal here. So we're just going to quickly bring up the channel here on the laptop, which I'm also using to monitor text chat. And we'll see if I actually have sound. And we will unmute and we will wait. And I hear sound. And I think I hear sound. Actually, it's very quiet. I hear very quiet sound. I'm not sure why I hear very quiet sound. My levels show that they're in the yellow, but then again, it could just be that my laptop is a little on the quiet side. Anyways, that'll be fine. And chat is up, so we're going to monitor chat, and we're going to build a computer here. Um, no guarantees that it will work because a lot of these parts I don't know that they're tested. I went on eBay, I bought a bunch of parts, I'm hoping for the best. So this could be a learning experience here. And I'm just going to refresh my YouTube page because we are multi-streaming to YouTube and Twitch. YouTube is good for preserving the videos for future viewing, and they do also support live as well. So, this way we cast the net out. So, hello, I'm Johnny Gators. Welcome to the Computer Bar. And we got ourselves a nice cold beer here. Now, building a computer on a bar where you're drinking beers with wet glasses that have the condensation dripping off of them is probably not best practice, but we'll be careful here. And they're my parts. I paid for them. If I break them, that's on me. Um, yeah, so I guess we should go back a little bit. In the past on the stream, we've covered some other machines from my history. We took a look at the Compaq Portable, which was the first computer I laid hands on. Not the specific one I laid hands on, but another one of that same model. And I played around with that a bit. We got that working. And what I've learned is the easiest way to get a working Compaq Portable is to buy two Compaq Portables that between the two of them have known working parts that you need. Um, We've also more recently played around with the Computerland BC88, which is an 8088 desktop computer with a big red switch to turn it on the side of it, with CGA graphics and a whole 640K RAM and a 20 megabyte internal hard drive, which was the model of our first family computer. And so that has been fun. The first episode of the Computer Bar, I kind of introduced a tower I built. That's a dual boot 98 XP machine. It's built with hardware that really lives more comfortably in the XP era, but it still has the capabilities of running 98. And that's been a good functional machine to have something that in a pinch can easily read and write various disk formats. And it's all in all, it's very versatile. A lot of things you can do in XP or 98 on that machine that a modern machine can't do. Um, so that's been the purpose of that machine. But having a really good XP machine that lives comfortably in the 98 era, and having 8088 machines that are working well with the early versions of DOS kind of left a hole in the middle there. And that's the hole we're looking to fill here tonight. And that would be the machines of the Windows 3.0, 3.1 era. And that really brings us to my second family computer growing up. And unfortunately, I don't know what happened to that machine. I couldn't tell you a thing about the make or model of the hardware in that machine. So recreating that machine, rebuilding that machine, is impossible. I don't know that anyone in our family remembers any details about it. But that machine was a 386, and it had Windows 3.1. It was something my dad picked up through someone at work. It was already a little outdated by the time my dad bought it. I think Pentiums were. I know we didn't have that machine for very long before I started thinking about buying my own computer with some, summer money working summer jobs. And at that point in time, Pentium was the current machine. So I don't know if Pentium's already out when we got to 386, but they certainly were out not long after we got that. I'm just going to take another quick look to see if anyone has joined us in the chat. So yeah, that was our second family computer, was some random 386 desktop that I don't remember any details about. And but by the time we got that, I was familiar with Windows 3.1. I'd seen it on school desktops. My high school had a computer lab that had all Windows 3.1 desktops in there. Although for the most part we exited out to DOS, and I think there was a version of Word or WordPerfect that actually ran in DOS. I took a computer programming and basic class which used GW Basic, which exited out to DOS for. But they did all run Windows 3.1 and would put up the screensaver with the name of the high school and the marquee screensaver all in there at different paces and different size fonts, making it look completely disorganized. But that's okay. So yeah, when we got our second family computer with Windows 3.1, because up to that point, our family computer was the Computerland BC88, which could barely run Windows 3.0, which we never loaded on it. It was a real step up to go from an 8088 to a 386, and it was nice to have Windows in our house that I was familiar with, so that we have a mouse and play solitaire. And it came with Windows Entertainment Pack stuff, and so I kind of want to build a machine that fits comfortably in that era. And so part of me thought, well, build a 386, since with a family computer was a 386. But since I can't build that exact machine anyways, and I don't know anything about that exact machine, to me, it makes more sense to build a 486 than a 386. I mean, they're essentially in the same era. 486 is basically a faster 386. I think you can get 95 on a 486, but it'll certainly run Windows 3.1 comfortably. It'll use hardware that's good for that era of computing. So it really doesn't make sense to build a 386 when you can build a 486. So I kind of decided, well, I'm going to make my Windows 3.1 machine a 486 machine. And so I did a little eBaying and looking around and thinking about different parts to get. It's you got to line up a lot of parts, and I don't have a lot of old parts from that era lying around. And so I finally just lined up a bunch of stuff. I'm like, that's it, I'm doing it. Buying that, buying that, buying that. And one thing I knew I wanted to buy was this case. And this case, I don't know if it's the exact same model, but it's certainly very similar, if it's not the exact same model, to the case that my first Pentium was built in. I'm struggling to remember details about that computer. My first, the one I bought with summer money, I know it was a Pentium, 133 megahertz. I know it had a CD-ROM drive, but I'm struggling to remember if it used a PS2 keyboard and mouse or if it used a larger size keyboard connector and serial mouse. Because if you asked me a few months ago, I would have said no. I think it was PS2 by then. But this case does not take PS2 ports in the layout of it. And if this is the case that I had for my Pentium machine, then I would have had to take. And when I stop and think about it, I go, I might have been running a serial mouse at that point. I might have gotten the PS2 mouse and keyboard with my second computer that ran Windows 98 on an AMD K62 processor. But I'm digressing and railing at this point. The point is that I really like this case. And now the obvious thing to do would be to buy this case and build a Pentium 133 megahertz machine in it. But I don't remember the details of the hardware that machine had in it. And I don't really need a Pentium machine. I really want to build something. A Pentium probably could do a fine job running 3.1, but you're really starting to get out of that era at that point. And so I thought it'd be nice to use this case to build a 486 in it. And so that's my plan. And so not only will I get a nice 486 that kind of fits into that era of machines in my collection, but it also looks like a machine I used to have. So that'd be a fun little additional detail there. So that's the case we're going to use. This case got banged up a little bit by UPS and was already banged up before it was shipped with UPS, which means I can't really claim anything because there's a eBay seller based out of California that's selling a lot of new old stock PC cases, and they're not cheap. PC cases in general are not cheap, which is frustrating because a lot of times if I'm just building a machine to use, I just want a functional box. I don't need something fancy. I don't want to spend a lot of money. But then when you get to the older stuff, limited supplies is what's driving up, even though it's just a functional box. And this one was marked down to under $100 because it was a chip in the corner, and it didn't come with a picture of exactly what the chip in the corner would look like because they had multiple ones that were chipped in the corners, and that was their price for a damaged one. And then plus shipping such a large thing across the country from California, that's $50. So that drove the cheap option over $100 for a case. But I just had to bite the bullet and spend $100 plus for a case for my 486 build. And when it got here, it was not packaged all that well, and the whole front had come off, and all the pegs that were holding it on were all damaged. And so it was hard to say what damage was caused by UPS and what damage was already there. So I'm just like, whatever, I'll glue it, and I'll live with it. And it glued together all right. It's holding together. And it just has a little bit of that cosmetic in the corner, which I also glued a little bit, so that should be fine. Should be fine. And we're just checking chat here because you can all write in if you're watching or have any questions or are interested in vintage computer builds. If you have any questions about any of the parts that I'm using here, feel free to ask, and I will gladly answer any questions about these parts or anything as we do this. I'm going to step away from the bar for a moment, though, because we got some tunes running. So I'm just going to turn the record over because the bar has a radio built in, and I like to throw some tunes on while doing a little computer building, and it shouldn't interrupt the talking all that much. So of course our build is going to need some a motherboard and processor, and this was an eBay purchase that came with a chip already in the motherboard and a pretty decent 486 chip. And a few things attracted me to this board. One was that it came with a DX4 486 processor, which is a 100 megahertz processor. Now, one thing I just looked up just now before the show was there are different models of the DX4. And this one is a model that only runs in 3X mode. And some of them run in 3X or 2X mode. And I think what that means is that turbo mode is not an option on this, because turbo mode was basically a mode to slow down a processor so that if a game runs too fast, you could run it in slower mode. And from what I'm seeing on Wikipedia, it says 3x mode only. I think that means that this doesn't support a turbo mode, so I can't slow this one down. Which is okay, because I have older machines if I want to run something slower. But it would be nice to get a chip that supports that, because my case does have a turbo button on it. And this board has pins for that. So maybe I'll keep an eye out for other DX4 chips that support 2x and 3x mode, and I might swap this out at a later time. The other thing that really drew me to this board is this battery connector right here. A lot of motherboards from like the 386, 286, 80, 88 era, and earlier in the 486 era, had batteries soldered onto the board. And so you have to desolder them because they're always dead by this point. A lot of times they're leaking and might cause some corrosion that you got to deal with and clean up and hope that it didn't do damage. And they're a pain to replace. You got to solder in a socket, because generally this is the better option. You know, so you find a socket like that and solder it in where the old battery was. And this takes a CR2032 battery, which are easily obtained. Certainly order them through Amazon. I mean, they're the same thing that modern motherboards are taking. My bathroom scale takes this battery. If you have a Super Nintendo and you notice that your save files in Super Mario World aren't saving anymore, you open up the cartridge, there's one of these in there. You change that, you're good to go. So yeah, these are, having the board already with that socket saves me the trouble of dealing with a soldering iron on this thing. And then also, this has two types of memory sockets here. And these longer ones are the 72-pin ones, which are the newer technology between the two. And so this gives us the option of putting in 8 gig sticks. And I have a pair of 8 gig sticks, so this will be, no, not gig, meg. Let's not get nuts here. So we're going to put in 16 megs of RAM on this, which is probably overkill for a 486, but hey, why not? I'm a little confused about the memory, what will work and what won't work on here, because this is 72-pin RAM. The person that sold it describes it as, you know, being good for PCs, Macs, Unix, whatever. But I'm a little concerned because I'm not sure if Mac RAM and PC RAM really were the same thing or not from that era. I don't know much about building computers from this era. I didn't start building my own machines until the XP era. So I very well could make some mistakes with some incompatible parts on this build here tonight. And this is the one I'm worried about, that I'm going to get a beep code telling me I got no memory with these in here. Because there's parity RAM and there's non-parity RAM, and I can't find anything that says if one works and one doesn't work on this board. And generally parity is better than non-parity if you have the option. So this is parity RAM, but this board might not want parity RAM. I don't know. Could get in trouble there. And it's also got these longer slots here. I forget what they're called, but that's what we're going to use, one of these for our video card. It's got this extra connector on the back here. Of course, the computer's going to need drives. And I have this IDE drive kicking around that's still working pretty good. This drive is an 8.6 gig drive. I'm not sure where this drive came from. It's something I've had. I don't think it comes from one of my purchased... I don't think it comes from one of my everyday use purchase machines. I think it may have came in another secondary machine I picked up somewhere along the way. And it's just one of the drives that just happens to haven't died over the years of acquiring stuff. 8.6 gig is a bit big for this build because we're installing DOS 6.22, which can only go up to 2 gig for partition. We could add more partitions, but you know, I might swap this out for something smaller at some point. but this is what I have handy now. So, I'm trying to cut down on purchases because I had to buy a lot of parts. I already had a spare 3.5 floppy drive kicking around. Same for 5.25. And I picked up a CD-ROM drive because all my spare drives I had were serial ATA DVD drives, which are not going to work with this. So I had to buy an old CD-ROM drive. I had picked up accidentally a IDE controller card that will do a pair of hard drives and a pair of floppies. I'm thinking that this will work. The hard drive and the CD-ROM drive will work on the IDE as a primary master slave. I don't have a secondary connector on that controller, but I do have the floppy, which will do these two. So I think I'll be okay without a secondary IDE. Not 100% sure, but if I don't get CD-ROM drive working tonight, oh well, I'll have to buy another controller and deal with that later. This power supply is new. Bought it off of Amazon. So you can still buy AT-style power supplies. And so that was something I knew that someone brought to my attention when I was asking questions about other power supply things. And so I was like, oh, that is good, because I have bad luck with vintage computer power supplies. Power supply is always the thing that dies. And if you don't got power, you don't got a computer. So it's nice to have a new option. Power supplies of this era come with a physical switch on it. And the case has a power switch, but it's really just a button that just pushes, that's there to push something like this. And there's a few screw holes to mount this. But the screw holes in the case are further away than the screw holes in this button. So I'm going to have to figure out some kind of a bracket or something for that. But for now, I'm just going to hang this out of the case and turn it on, turn it off, and see if it works. We'll figure out the details of mounting things at a later date. And I've got a bunch of cards and everything, but I think it's time to start putting things together. And we'll talk about the cards as I put them in. Now, in the past, I had a second overhead cam, but that camera was old, looks crappy, and then my laptop started getting laggy when it was trying to run video for two cameras at the same time. So I've not set that up tonight. But yeah, let's go ahead and make some room here. And take a drink of the beer. So after all, it is a computer bar. Okay, so now this plate comes out to let us easily mount the motherboard onto it. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out. Okay, there we go. That slides out like that. Okay, and so we want this to go. I think I got to still look at this though to see how this all lines up. Oh, this is going to need to go lower. Okay. All right, I think this lines up to this board like this. All right, now I'm a little confused how this board is going to mount to this. This case did come with some parts. And some of those parts are these plastic clips, but I'm not sure how to get these plastic clips to stay. I don't know if that's supposed to slide. I mean, because they slide, but then they'd slide off. And this didn't come with any directions. I'm wondering if that's like that. That could be. Oh, it could be that these parts clip into here, and so that you can slide that onto there. And then these holes here, well, at least this hole here will screw in to make it more solid. So yeah, that might be what we're meant to do. Let's see if I can make this fit in there. Yeah, that'll fit in there. Okay. All right, I think we're getting this figured out. These plastic clips clip to the motherboard, so you can slide it to the backing here, and then you could also use a screw and a little mounting plate to get the extra hole fitting on there. Of course, this one doesn't like to stay on that hole because that hole is oval, which I think is supposed to make it easier to put this on, but once we get everything together, it should all stay put. Alright, and I think this hole takes one, and this hole will take one. And both of those holes will take ones. Okay, that one. And one more of these clips, and we should be in good shape. There we go. There we go. We're looking good. And once these all line up, I believe we're going to want that hole to line up there. So let's get that screwed in there. Let's see. I think that's the only hole that's going to line up for screwing purposes on this motherboard. This case could take bigger motherboards. All right. And now let's see. We got some more screws here. Got to find the right screw for that. And we got this and is it one of these screws? Was it just a normal screw or is it a smaller screw? Got to find the right screw for the hole, don't we? I think it's one of these. Well, you know what? Got more of these stands, so I can try to fit this in while it's out. No, that's not going to screw in there. We need something with smaller threads. Okay. think, yes, there we go, one of those. All right, so we got one of these little pad circles. And we line up that screw on the hole. Screwdriver. And that gets us solid into place with plastic clips holding there. That can't slide down because that's screwed in. And there we go. I think we now have our mounted motherboard. And we'll go ahead and slide these tabs back into these slots. And I had 2 screws. I think it were those types. Just screwing our case back together here. And then we can start connecting wires to our motherboard, because we got wires on the case that go to spots in the motherboard. And I did find documentation for this motherboard online. There's a website that I just searched for the model numbers I found saw on the chips of the board, and that brought up some Google research. So that also helped me because, you know, I saw that on eBay. So I'm like, oh, okay. If I buy that board, I'll be able to figure out all the pinouts and all that. All right. And our keyboard connector lines right up with that hole there. So that is good. So now we can lie this down. And start building some in here. Once again, chat is up, chat is open, and I am monitoring it. So feel free to chime in if you have any questions or comments as we build this 486 here. So I'm just going to pull up my document I have with this motherboard information and start looking for different pinout information. Now we are going to want to install a BIOS battery on this board, so we may as well do this while I'm staring at that empty slot. Okay, and I believe this should go negative side down, positive side up, because positive covers this whole side and the edges, and the clip has a contact at the edge and a contact at the bottom, so it's going to touch both of those. And it should just click right in. There we go. All right, we got our battery installed. Oh, we do need to install our power supply. We got plenty of room up there to do that, though. So I think we're good with the order of things so far. Got a bunch of wires here that get connected in. So let's take a look. All right, turbo LED is jumper 19. Oh, power LED is jumper 15. Let's see where jumper 15 is. Jumper 15 is, it's pointing to that area there, but that's 5 pins. All right, let's take a look what we got. Oh, there we go. Power LED is actually 3. So I don't know which 3 pins out of these it goes on, but we'll try the first 3 there, and if we don't get a power light, we'll move that around. Okay. JP18 is the speaker. This case did come with this speaker. I don't know where this speaker is supposed to mount in this case. It was a little bit crushed and just floating around the box. And I didn't see a spot where there's any clips or anything to hold it. The easiest would just be to let the magnet of the speaker hold it to like the bottom of the case, and you just hear a beep coming from inside the case. So we will do that for now. So let's see, that's going to be JP18, which is next to JP15. And that actually is 4 pins for this 4-pin connector. So that one's not confusing. Okay. And JP19 is the turbo LED, which probably won't be functional with this processor, but we may as well connect it because we might switch a processors at some point, and then we'll have our, it doesn't hurt to connect a light that's not used. All right, so turbo LED is this connector, and that's perfect because JP19 is just 2 pins. So that one is easy peasy. Next to that is JP20, and JP20 is not, I had to scroll down, is what I had to do to find JP20, because they did not put all the information in the same space. Unless JP20 is something else. Huh. Let's do a control find on here and type in JP20. Oh, there we go. External battery, location JP. Oh, reset switch is JP20. Okay, so that's going to be a switch. All right, so that is going to be, let's see. Yep, that's the blue and white one. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put that on there. Now we're going to look for JP22. JP22 is the turbo switch, which is not functional. Also, our turbo switch is 3-prong, and this board has 2 pins. Huh. So I'm not sure what is up with that, why our turbo switch has a 3-pin connector and the board only has 2 pins. So I don't think this case's turbo switch is compatible with this board, or we have to modify that. So we're not going to connect that, which is fine because I don't think this processor supports that. Green PC connector is JP23. What does green PC connector mean? The only green PC connector I know is this green wire, which is the power LED, but we already hooked that up. So I don't know what the heck green PC connector is. Huh. Well, what do we still have? We still have the hard disk drive LED to connect. And for some reason, the turbo switch comes with a short and long wire, which both have the same color coordination on it. So I don't know what the deal with that is. The hard disk LED is not essential, but we should find that. So let's take a look. Unless that's what the green PC connector is. I don't think so, though. Let's do a search for HDD. No, HDD doesn't find something. Let's try H period D period. No. All right, let's search for LED. All right, we got power LED, turbo LED. Huh. I'm not seeing a hard disk activity jumper setting on here. Well, we'll scroll down through some more jumper settings on this page here, because this is just thrilling radio, or, streaming anyways. Um, see, those are jumpers for different cache configurations, which these jumpers should all be configured for whatever's in it already, so I don't think I need to mess with those jumpers. I'm hoping that that was all already configured properly for the CPU that's in there. All right, 6, 7, and 8 should be closed, well, for 100, yeah. All right, well, let's verify that. Let's verify that jumper 6, 7, and 8 are all closed, as a little verification that everything is configured properly based on the hardware that it came with. My apologies. I seem to be losing battery on my receiver, which takes two AAAs and doesn't warn me and doesn't have a battery meter, unlike my transmitter pack in my pocket. But that's okay because I still have two AAAs left. So, flipping this on, off and on, turn it on briefly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and change the batteries right now. Helps if I unmute the channel. We should be back now. And sorry about that. I don't know how long I was silent for. But that's the problem with not having viewers. All right, so we just got to connect power here to the 3.5 floppy because we're going to need that to install all our stuff and set up our hard drive. So I think we got ourselves drives. Okay, we're going to need video though. And for that, I have this. And this here's a VGA card. And I forget exactly what it is, so I'm going to pull up my eBay account so I can tell you exactly what this card is. It was something that I read a few articles about building 486s, and this was a recommended card that I found one on eBay was available at a reasonable price for what it is, in my opinion anyways. Not that I've been shopping a whole lot, so I don't know. Maybe I overpaid, maybe I got a good deal. But what I got here is a Diamond Speedstar Pro VLB 1 megabyte video card, Cirrus Logic graphics ISA. And I got that for $50. And see, it's got the extra connectors on the end there, which goes into those longer slots. I'm not sure if we want to put this all the way on the bottom or if we want to come up a little bit. I'm really not sure the difference between these slots or if it's better to use. Oh, well, they're labeled 0, 1, 2 starting from the higher up, which I think is more convenient anyways. So I'm going to put it on 0. So let's pop out that tab. Line it up and push it in. Okay, is that in all the way? Don't feel like these cards are going in all the way. Oh no, that looks fine. It just doesn't slide in as nicely. But it went in all the way. All right. Have we run out of the right screws? Yes, yes we have. But that's okay. That's why I got this whole case of screws. Because I have more than enough screws. Because when you build a machine, you need lots of screws. All right, so that will give us video. Nice VGA video right there. I'm going to turn the record over. And Ah, that was good. Gonna have to grab another beer soon. Okay, so we have a keyboard connection built into the motherboard, which is fine and all nice and dandy. But back in this era, you would use serial mouse, and I don't have a serial port on this motherboard, nor do I have pinouts to connect a serial breakout, because I think a lot of motherboards would come with connectors on them. And you see there's a lot of places that you could mount extra ports over here. And so mounting a serial port here to go right on the motherboard would be real convenient, but you don't have that. So I picked up this card, which has a serial connection, and I'm hoping this just works. So I'm going to put this next to our drive controller. Because why not? Okay, that is not going in right. Why are you not? Oh my God. Something is blocking us from going. It's almost like they didn't make this go up high enough. Yeah, I can't get this card to go in. Because this end butts up against that, but meanwhile it hasn't slid in yet. So, like, this case is messed up. It's not giving me enough room to push all the cards in all the way. I mean, this is... Does the motherboard need to get pushed up more? I mean, I used the connectors it came with, so everything should be sized right. But this is giving me a whole lot of trouble. I mean, I think the contacts are touching, but that this is not. No. That, if I screw that in, that's not even going in. Oh, God. This is, I'm going to need to bend this or something. Well, I got pliers in the basement. All right now. I'm worried about this video card. No, not the. I'm worried about this controller card. Looks like contact is being made there, but it looks like that really should be going in further. Oh, it looks like this cage can slide down a little bit. So I'm going to loosen those screws and see if I can just push this whole bracket that holds the cards screw in. If I can make that go down some. Just enough to allow me to put my cards in properly. No, it's not. It is not right. All right, let's take these screws out and see what I can do with this. Oh, that screw also holds it. Ah, there we go. Now it slides a bit. Well, let's put this screw back in loose. So I think that gives it room to go. I don't know if that's going to be enough for this, though. It's making a difference, but not enough. I don't know why this is up higher than it really needs to be. Let's try to tighten that push down as far as we can and then see if we can make things work. Okay. So that moved that bracket down so that these cards can go in a little lower. And that helped my video card because my video card was mostly in and now it's in all the way. So this serial card is just a bit difficult. So I'm going to bend this up a little bit to see if that will give me enough room to work with to slide it in and still secure it. All right, I'm in. I don't know if I could screw that in though. That's going to be tricky. Oh, there we go. I think that'll just do it. It's annoying when the parts are not sized appropriately for standards. But we made it work. Now the problem is the screw might pull it out of the slot. All right, I think that's still making all contact, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. So now if we don't have a working mouse, I'm going to be questioning, is it the card or is it the case? And we'll have to test. Oh. And we got one more card to put in. And that's a sound card. And I got here a Sound Blaster Vibra 16. And I am going to, well, I could either put it next to the video card or next to the serial card. Generally, I try to, if I have an option, put spacing between sound and other things, but in this case, it's still got to go next to something, unless I move my video card down, which I don't think I'll do. So I may as well just go to the next slot that's available here and put it next to the serial card. And that slid in nicely without giving us problems. So yeah, adjusting these screws, moving that cage down, did the job for the most part. That serial card's just a little off, so it kind of threw us in a double whammy, but at least that got me to check out the adjustments. So now I'm pretty sure my video card and controller card are all lined up nicely. It's just that serial card I'm a little worried about. Okay, and I'm going to take all these extra screws that came with the case and put them back in this little baggie that it came with. Just to tidy up a bit, and then we're going to start connecting power cords and see what we get. And I have a VGA capture card, so I'm hoping that will be adequate for setting up. And otherwise, I'll have to pull out I have an LCD monitor nearby that I can pull out and look at on the bar here. And we're not going to put a cover on the case yet, because we still need the power button to be accessible until we figure out that problem. So I think I had 2 extra screws, but I may have used them by accident, because there were 2 screws holding the cover on the case, but that's okay because they're the same type of screws as I have in there. So let's put those parts away. Oh, I have one more cable I need to hook up. Back in the day, oh, my floppy came loose. Let's tighten those screws up. Back in the day, if you wanted to play music from your CD-ROM drive, you had to have a cable that would connect directly from your CD-ROM drive to the sound card. Because, yes, the CD-ROM drive was capable of playing a CD, but your computer, not so much. It would just output the audio on a audio output connector that's up here on your CD-ROM drive. And there's pins on the sound card that'll accept that. So that way you could tell it play a CD and the music will just come over to your sound card and go out your sound, so it'll come out your speakers. Or you can always use the headphone jack, because CD-ROM drives also have headphone jacks, which a lot of people would connect their speakers to that and go, oh, I figured it out. And it's like, no, that works for playing CDs, but now you're not going to get your computer sounds. It's like, yeah, that's one way you could use that. Okay, now I have barely just enough room to sneak this connector in there onto my sound card. I might actually need to take the sound card out to get this connector in there, because I'm kind of lining it up and missing. Almost, almost. Oh, come on. Okay, we're going to just take that out. That's what we're going to do. because that is giving me too much difficulty. There we go. That just goes right in there. And that will pass our audio from the CD-ROM drive when we have it play an audio CD and over in the sound card. So that way if we want to listen to a CD while playing Windows 3.1 games, we can. I'm not sure at what point that became no longer necessary. I think my Windows 95 machine still had that, but I also still had an ISA sound card on that machine, because that was a motherboard that had both ISA and PCI slots, which is an option for building 486 machines, but one article I read said that they prefer to avoid 486 boards with PCI slots because PCI was still new and glitchy in that era. So I'm going to grab another beer before we plug it in and turn it on and see what we get. I'm going to pull a nice new frosty cold mug out of the freezer. I like my beer cold. And I am drinking Yingling. Good stuff. All right, let's see if we got any chat, especially now that my microphone's working again. Nope. No one checking us out tonight. That's okay. All right. So, let's go ahead. Let's put that over there so we can see it. And I have over here a power cord from the last machine I was working on over here. We're going to plug that in. And I have here my Computerland keyboard that goes to the 8088, but it has a switch for modes, and I think we want to put this in the mode that the 286 model would use. And that should get us by for keyboard purposes on this machine. There we go. And I'm going to go grab my serial mouse. I don't know if that's going to work out of the right away. I'm hoping Windows is good at detecting and installing things, but I don't know if it's going to know what to do with this card or if I'm going to have to find a driver for it. But we'll connect the mouse. If anything, I'm hoping we at least can get DOS installed tonight. All right, gives me a mouse to work with. That over there. And we got my video capture device to hook up to the VGA video card, which hopefully will just work with some standard settings right out the gate. All right, so now to turn that on, hopefully that's going to work for us today. Okay, all right, now we're going to set that to use VGA for the input. Okay. There we go. So that is our VGA capture, which may or may not actually show us video, because sometimes the resolution can be tricky for booting up. And speaking of booting up, I got here a box of discs I prepared with DOS and Windows 3.1. Now hopefully it'll partition and set up this hard drive with a 2 gig partition for us. I do have something on that hard drive. I think I installed DOS on it. I was trying to install Windows 95 on it when I was last using it on a different machine with different hardware. So I don't expect that to boot up to anything. So here we go. All right, the power supply is turned on. Things are cranking up and making sounds. And I should get a beep code of some sort at the very least, because we got the PC speaker hooked up in the right spot. But I don't see anything coming out the VGA capture, which means we might need to get a monitor and see if it's just outputting in a resolution or format that our capture card don't like, or if our capture is just not working. All right. Let's make sure it's still configured for VGA. Yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's grab a monitor. Now, I do have a CRT VGA monitor upstairs to use at Vintage Things, but I have a few spare LCDs. Now, I was using these on ARMS, so I don't have the bases for these anymore. So that's going to present us with a challenge. But that's okay. So I'm going to take this cable off of here. And I'm going to put it right directly onto here. Which means we're going to have to turn off our capture, because that's just going to be a black square since nothing's hooked up to that now. Although it's still flickering something every now and then, so I wonder what the heck it's even doing. Alright. And I have another power cable down here. I'm going to go ahead. And now then, let's turn that on and see if anything is showing there. It says cable not connected. And it's not even letting me go through a menu because it keeps saying cable not connected. So, it's seeing nothing. All right, so let's turn this off. And let's turn it back on. Now, unfortunately, the only thing the power supply really does is, the power button just turns on the power supply, which then sends power out through all the connectors. So I don't even know if our motherboard's getting anything here or doing anything. But we got a fan on here and we got hard drive noises, but that's because it's got its own power connection, so they're spinning up. but I'm getting no beep code or post or anything from this motherboard. So, I'm going to need to take another look at the eBay listing for that motherboard and see if it was even tested. Because I paid $110 for this motherboard, and for that I'd expect something to work. Use motherboard, good condition, repair or parts as is. Okay, it says good condition though. See, I always hate that when they throw in, oh, as is parts or repair at the end of, hey, it's in good condition, but as is. Like, that says to me that this seller is full of shit. That they tested it, it didn't work, but they didn't want to list it as not working, so they pretended like, hey, I don't know, as is. I don't know means I didn't get it to work. So, yeah, I don't know if we have a dead motherboard or what. And unfortunately, you see, when it comes to building modern stuff, I have a lot of parts. So you just swap out parts and see what you can get working. But when it comes to this, I don't have other parts to zero in. But my big concern is that I'm not even getting a beep code from this motherboard. That troubles me. That says to me that we got a dead motherboard. And that's the risk of eBay buying. And it's probably not worth going back to the seller since they threw on a as-is description on there. One thing that's good though is that it was a motherboard processor combo, and it's a decent processor. So if anything, at least I got a processor out of the deal that might work. So yeah, that might be. I don't know if we're at the step that the next thing to do is to try buying another motherboard. If I did that, I'd find one that someone actually shows working on the listing. So there we go. What have we learned today? We've learned how to put some parts together, and we've learned stay away from sellers that throw as is. I take chances sometimes because it was like, you see it, it says good. It's like, hey, if it works, that's great and it's worth it. But sometimes you got to take a risk on things like that when you see the thing you want, but it's not tested. So this would have been a cool motherboard if it worked, because easy battery situation to deal with, and takes 72-pin RAM, but it's not posting. I think at this point, what I would do is I would disconnect everything from the motherboard and see if I could find some better documentation for this motherboard. Usually there is a process you can go through where, I remember on some motherboards you read, it's like, when you turn it on, you'll get this error code because of no memory. Then you add the memory, you should get this error code that you don't have this. And you start adding things one by one generally. So I should try to see if I could just get a beep or an error code out of this motherboard. One thing I could check is verify the speaker works, which I'm pretty sure the speaker works, because that's pretty basic, cone, magnet, pair of wires coming out. But it's easy to verify the speaker, and may as well to start there, just to make sure that we have a working speaker. And then I might review all the jumpers, make sure all the jumpers are set to all the right positions, take everything off the board, and But I am, after putting this all together, I am now at the point at let's tear it all apart and start doing that. Um, so yeah, unfortunately, the 486 build did not go smoothly. Um, right now, we just got a collection of parts in a case that do nothing, which is always frustrating. Always a frustrating place to start with. That's the problem with like I said, with vintage builds. You're dealing with a lot of old parts, and if you don't have a lot of old parts that you've acquired, which I don't, I got rid of a lot of stuff. My first computer I bought was a Pentium 1, so newer than this by a little bit. And I don't have any parts of that anymore. So you got to, it's a challenging place to start from, where you're buying a bunch of old used parts, putting them together, and when it doesn't work, how do you test things one by one? Now, a few things I got going for me is I do have a Compaq Portable 3, which is a 286 machine. I think some of these cards would work in that, so I might be able to test some of the hardware there, just to check those out, see if I can get this video card working on there, and that would tell me if that's good. Get the sound card maybe. It might be a little tricky though, because that's a DOS machine. It's got Windows 3.0, but getting hardware to work in that, yeah, well, that gives me something to play around with. But yeah, not really sure exactly what the next step. Well, like I said, I got to get a beep. I got to get a beep out of the motherboard is what I got to get. If I don't get a beep out of the motherboard, I don't got a motherboard. And without a motherboard, I don't got a computer. So I got to take everything off, see if I can make the motherboard beep. And if I can't make the motherboard beep, then I got to buy another motherboard. I think that sums that up. All right. Well, if no one is going to join our stream tonight, then I guess it's time to wrap this one up. So if anyone does happen to stumble across the recording of this, thank you for checking this out. If anyone has any suggestions about what we could do next with this, or suggestions on troubleshooting the motherboard, please feel free to chime in on that. I deal with computers every day, work with computers, work in tech support, but I'm a little out of my element with stuff of this vintage. I mean, I know how to install DOS. I know how to use a working computer of this era, but troubleshooting this hardware is where I'm kind of playing guessing games. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up, and I'd raid someone, but I have no views. So, good night.